So this is a fairly large topic, and so I'm going to break it down into three separate sections here. But overall, we're going to be talking about the conversion of timber, the seasoning of timber, and then common defects in timber. So what is conversion? Conversion is the process of sawing logs into square-edged pieces of timber suitable for use by carpenters, joiners, cabinet makers, etc. So it's basically that process of turning it from the log that's been cut from the forest into planks, boards, beading, lots of different sizes and shapes of timber that can be used. The logs are usually converted into commercial sizes as soon as possible after the tree has been felled to minimise shrinkage damage. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. That comes into seasoning and defects. The newly converted timber is in a green, rough sawn state and has to be seasoned and dressed for joinery and cabinet work. Now, when we talk about dressed or dressing timber, that's the process where we actually turn it into properly square pieces of timber that are square, straight, able to be used. The methods of converting logs vary according to the class of timber, the quality and sizes of the logs, and the market requirements. Consideration must also be given to the effects of shrinkage and seasoning of some timbers. The softer varieties of timbers such as pines, silky oak, Meranti, cedar, Queensland maple, and similar cabinet woods are generally sawn to sizes suitable for joinery and furniture making. The harder and denser timbers being usually converted to sizes for structural work, like bearers, joists, frames, that sort of thing. Methods of conversion. Now, in Australian hardwood mills, because that's primarily what we deal with here in Australia, if it's not plantation grown pine, which is softwood, generally it's hardwood. So in Australian hardwood mills, logs are broken down with twin circular saws or a log bandsaw into flitches. The flitches are then resawn into marketable sizes on a smaller circular saw. The flitches are also docked to set lengths, while waney sections and splits are cut out. Now, before I move on, there's a little bit of terminology that I've used there. A flitch is, another way of talking about a flitch is like a slab, basically. It can vary, obviously, in width and thickness, but generally what a flitch will have is at least two sides that are rough sawn and are mainly or broadly parallel with each other. So another way we might think of a flitch is a slab. The other term there we've talked about is we've used the word docked, and docking timber is where we cut timber to length. So we're cutting across the grain. So it's common for us to use that term docked or docking. And finally, we've got waney sections. And again, interesting term, but a waney section is just like a live edge, or it's the outer edge of the tree. So for example, if I create a flitch, which is a slab, then both outer edges of that flitch will often be the live outer edge of the tree, which is called a waney section. So they would be cut out. So the first method we're going to look at, and there's three methods of converting timber that we're going to look at, and that's live sawing. And it's also called sawing through and through. One of the things we've got to be very careful about here is that in other parts of the world, they use different terminology. And so you could find lots of different ways to call this process, but we just have to be careful that we use the appropriate terminology for the Australian context. So it's also known as through and through sawing. and it results in the central planks being radial cut, and you can see that in the images down below, which is the same as them having been quarter sawn, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And the two outer areas of the converted log being tangential cut or back sawn. This gives an increased choice of grain pattern. Another advantage of live sawing is that it is an economical cut, saving time, and it leaves very little waste. The main problem with live sawing is the difficulty of cutting out faults such as piping, which you'll get right in the middle of the tree in the pith, internal gum pockets, and checks or shakes. Now again, we're going to talk about gum pockets, checks or shakes coming up. Now you'll often find, plantation timbers like radiata pine will be live sawn, but also timber that's used for low value applications where a little bit of distortion in the timber doesn't matter. So maybe like for house frames, things like that. Back sawing is a very common method used here in Australia, and you can see in the image here on the right, it's the method 2. Have a good look at these images. They come out of a book, a really good older book by Walton, which is Woodworking in Australia. It's also known as the Bible by woodworkers. It's worth trying to find a copy of it. The images here have a lot of information in there. So back sawing is also known as tangential cut or slash cut. It produces boards whose faces are, in general, tangential to the growth rings. It's a very flexible method. It's well suited to securing high-grade lumber from varied and faulty logs. So often what you'll do in the mill is you'll actually look at each individual log and work out a plan for cutting it. And you can see on the images there that they actually show first cut. So that would be the first cut. Then the log is laid down flat on that face that's created by that first cut. Then the second cut and the third cut. And then after that, then it's broken down into smaller and smaller pieces. And you can see there's a couple of variations there. Timbers such as red cedar, Oregon, radiata pine, and alpine ash, which possess distinct growth rings, are usually back sawn because this exposes the most decorative figure or the most decorative grain in the timber. Timber for ceiling and floor joist bearers and axe and hammer handles are generally back sawn because there is more strength in the direction of the growth rings. Back sawn boards shrink mostly in width and tend to cup or warp away from the heart of the tree. And we've talked about that in timber movement. And you'll see here with the change of image, that's the kind of grain feature that you'll get from back sawn boards. This is American walnut. Quarter sawing. So that's the bottom one in the image here. This is also known as radial cut or rift cut. It produces boards whose faces are generally parallel to the medullary rays and at right angles to the growth rings. The log requires even more frequent turning than in back sawing, and more timber is lost through waste. So it is a specialist conversion method because yes, more timber is lost and it's more time consuming. However, the recovery rate of the timber is still good because quarter sawn timber seasons very evenly. So you tend not to get the defects, the seasoning defects that you can get with other methods of conversion. And again, we're going to talk about that, what those defects are soon. Timbers with distinct ray figure, such as silky oak, sycamore, and to a lesser degree maple, reveal a very decorative figure called silver grain when they are quarter sawn. Oak in particular has this feature. Timbers with interlocked grain, such as Queensland maple and walnut, show a valuable decorative stripe or ribbon figure, as you can see in this Australian-made guitar here. For this reason, most valuable cabinet timbers that have prominent rays and or interlock grain are fully quarter sawn. That is, sawn within 10 degrees of the rays. The seasoning process for quarter sawn timber is slower than for back sawn timber. Quarter sawn timber boards retain their shape and do not cup or check to any extent. The edge grain that is revealed produces an even wearing surface. Quarter sawn timber is used for architraves, mouldings and floorboards due to its dimensional stability. But more importantly, and probably where a lot more of the value is, quarter sawn timber is also the preferred timber for most cabinet work for the same reason. It's very stable.